Great. All right, Erik, this is wonderful. Hey, sure.
Thank you so much for taking some time. I promise I won't keep you long. I know
No, no, it's all
it's
good. It's all
late,
good.
late for you. But I want to tell you why what really got my attention and asked you to join me here. Your very kind request to give of your time. When I heard that you were from South Africa, of course,
Yeah.
that was interesting in and of itself, given the history of South Africa. But when I saw that, learned that you were a Jew living in South Africa, that really got my attention, and I was just so curious, and I really wanted to hear maybe if you could give me a thumbnail sketch of kind of, I guess, how that was for you, like your sort of experience growing up there, when you left and went to Israel, and maybe some of your reflections of South Africa today. I know that's a lot. You could probably write a book about that, but I was just curious if you could give me a thumbnail sketch of a little bit of your journey, because I think that would be, it's fascinating to me.
Wow, so Erik, I
Very
can't tell
unique
you,
experience.
most Jews went to South Africa from Lithuania. The majority of the community are Lithuanian Jews. So my grandparents came from Lithuania, and we grew up. It was interesting. Our grandparents were mainly quite religious, but our parents weren't. In other words, like it's quite that's the majority of my friends. Like they came there, when they came, they were British Jews. So when the Lithuanian Jews came, they were like the Greeners. So they joined, like, it was already a little bit established from the British Jews who came like with the gold rush and stuff like that. And the Lithuanian Jews came a bit later. And they did actually integrate quite well, but I don't know, our grandparents wanted their grandchildren to have like education, but they would, so most homes were kosher at home, but they would eat out, not kosher. So that happened like the majority of our friends. What happened was that going to shul, there was a very small reform, very small reform movement, but they were always fighting with each other. It was always Zionistic, the reform. So people just didn't feel comfortable there. So most of the people, even though they weren't religious, they would drive to shul, but it was always separate, like men separate from the women. There was no conservative. And I think that's basically why the community remained so intact, because they would go, and the rabbis were amazing. They welcomed them in. They were very welcoming. So the experience of going to shul for everyone was like very positive. That's on the Jewish side. And then they had the main schools, which were Zionistic. It's a very Zionistic community. And they would just support Israel. And rabbis who would come were also like pretty Zionistic. We had the chief rabbi, Rabinowitz, who was like, he came to, most of the chief rabbis, after they were here, they came to Israel. They were very Zioni, except for Rabbi Harris. He unfortunately passed away, and his wife remains in South Africa. So, but he came from England. So the Rabbonim, this is on a religious side, so they were mainly Orthodox, very Orthodox, and the community really weren't so Orthodox. But there was a very good respect for the rabbis. So growing up, I'll give you an idea, when I became, the youth movements were quite very important part of our lives. So what happened is that B'nai Akiva, that I belonged to, became one of the biggest youth movements, Habonim, which was a more secular. When it first started, it was very Zionistic, and a lot of the members came to Israel, and they contributed enormously to Israel because they had the Zionistic zeal. Today, it's changed drastically. There's so little, the B'nai Akiva has become the biggest youth movement. In the Habonim, which was a very big movement, they had some leaders that were actually pretty anti-Zionistic or very critical towards Israel. And that didn't go down so well with the parents. Also the schools. The schools were always pro-Zionistic, but then you unfortunately get like one or two teachers that advocate like questioning what's Israel doing on the West Bank and stuff like that, and or So, but the majority of the community is very, they'll support whatever government there is in Israel. And the chief rabbi that I based in, everybody was pretty Zionistic. But it has changed because now the reform, they had an Israeli rabbi who actually, when they had the whole thing with the Kotel, the Women of the Wall, I don't know if you're aware of it, the Women of the Wall.
Women of the Wall?
Yeah, that's like where you have progressive, mainly reform women who go to the Kotel and they want to have their own service and they put on tefillin, even though they're not religious.
Ah, okay. I have passing familiarity.
Okay, so it's a big deal here because it's like, it's very, very, and they sing and they want to take over and they feel they should be given equal space, but they only come on Rosh Chodesh in front of the cameras, and it's caused major disruption. And so it really has caused they've caused a lot of division, and they say pluralistic, and you know they want equal rights. So the reform Israeli rabbi was invited to the government to open up a session, and he started saying how bad the Israeli government is, that they don't respect equal rights of all the religions. So in front of the ANC government, which is extremely anti-Israel, you have the reform rabbi like rubbishing Israel in front of the government. So things have changed a bit. But I'm jumping a little bit. But what happened is that Mandela. Okay, so now that's just today. Today, it's not the same. You're getting a very small anti-Israel element. A few professors, the head of the Ronnie Casserols, who was the head of one of the heads of the Communist Party, was like the worst anti-Israel, and he was head of like internal security, a government member, but now he heads up the BDS against Israel. But he's in the minority. He thought he'd have a big following, but the majority of the people don't follow him at all. But you did have on UCT, that's a Cape Town University, they had a talk about African jury, and they invited, and I knew the late Mendel Kaplan, who was very Zionistic. He was head of the Jewish Agency, and he donated the building. But they invited somebody who advocates BDS, a Jewish professor, to speak at this forum. That caused major problems because it's something. It's like it's not good. You're getting anti-Israel, like professors, so-called professors or whatever, that are trying to infiltrate or influence the community. But the community, I'd say, more than 95% are very pro-Israel. That's a big deal because it's a very Zionistic community.
Tell me, if I may. So you were born there, correct?
Yeah. You can ask any question. You don't have to ask. You may, and there's no need to be so formal. So I was born there. So I'll tell you. So I grew up. I grew up in a very. I never ever had a bad experience in South Africa. I never experienced anti-Semitism. I was in a Jewish day school. Most of my, it was most of the Jews in South Africa when I grew up. I'll just tell from my own experience. Were very liberal. I'd say the majority were very liberal, pro-black. I grew up in apartheid. So we all had maids. It was a terrible system where the maids lived in like the back of the houses in not such great quarters. But the majority of the maids were treated much better by the Jewish community than any other community. But the whole concept is, it's like having a maid coming from Mexico, leaving her kids behind in Mexico, and she's working. It's inherently not nice because here she's the maids were looking after the white kids, but yet they couldn't look after their own kids. And there were some families that would lock their phones. You had a lock on your phone.
Lock their what? What do they lock?
Their telephones. In those days, when we never had so they didn't want or they would lock their fridge, but they would. It was weird because they would, our parents never did that, but they would entrust the lives of their children with these maids, but they wouldn't trust them. It was very strange. But even with all that, a lot of the Jewish community voted liberal. They were very liberal, the majority. There was the National Party and the more progressive, Liberal Party. So the Jews really voted Helen Suzman. She stood for the Liberal Party, or the United Party, which was much more English and liberal. So on a political side, with Nelson Mandela, this was before my time. This was when most of Nelson Mandela's friends were Jewish. So there was Joe Slovo was head of the Communist Party, so he was Soloveitchik. Are you coming from a very religious background?
No, not at all. More secular than anything else.
And now,
if you're referring to my childhood, yeah, secular for sure.
And now you're much more religious?
More, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't say, I'm not Haredi, but
okay, but you know who Soloveitchik is?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so Joe Slovo was he lost his father when he was 6 years old, and he went to Cheder. And in Cheder, the Cheder teacher, in those days, unfortunately, those were like people that couldn't get jobs. So they were like the misfits, like people that had nothing. So they let them be Cheder teachers, which was a big mistake. So one of the Cheder teachers hit him. And he came home and he said, I'll never, ever go back there again. But he never turned on his own people. He always kept the Jewish humor, and he never became like, he didn't hate his own people. He married Ruth first, who was a Jew, and she was killed in a bomb in Mozambique.
Oh, I see.
So Mandela's, most of his friends, he went to University Mandela, and he's Walter Sisulu, his very good friend, their friends were Jewish. The people that gave in the ANC, a lot of those that fought for the struggle were Jewish.
Really? Huh.
Absolutely. So it's amazing. So Mandela actually qualified as a lawyer at Wits. It's the university that I went to. Yep. What's very interesting is there were only 2 places. And what's interesting about apartheid is when the British ruled, when it was under British rule before 48, there was also apartheid. It was just under a different name. Blacks didn't live in white suburbs. So the NAP party, the National Party, the Afrikaans Party, came to power in 48. And what's interesting is Malan, who was the leader of the National Party, he was the second foreign leader or maybe he might have been the first foreign leader to actually visit Israel, which was quite interesting. But they didn't like the Jews. They loved Israel, but they didn't like the Jews, the Afrikaners. They had a lot of respect for Israel, but not for Jews. They were like, they sided with the Germans because the British were very bad to the Afrikaans during the Anglo-Boer War. And they still remember that very much, which I can't blame them really. But I never experienced any anti-Semitism growing up, ever. Huh. Anyway, wow. So Nelson Mandela, what happened is most of his friends were Jewish. And when he qualified from Wits and he needed to get articles, so no white firm would give a black a job. And the only person that gave him a job was Sadalski, Lars Sadalski. And his son, Dov Sadalski, lives in Israel. He lives in my suburb. And he wrote a book, Mandela's Boss. And in Mandela's book, Long Walk to Freedom, he writes there that the Jewish population were disproportionate, more sympathetic to the black cause. And he had a karasa tov. He had a tremendous appreciation for the Jewish community. Tremendous community. And when he came to Israel, he met with the Sadalski family. Nelson Mandela was a different person because he really appreciated those who helped him, and especially Lars Sadalski and Helen Suzman and the Jews. Most of the lawyers that defended him were Jewish, Maisels, and most of Govan Mbeki, his son Thabo, took over from Mandela. So Govan Mbeki's father, Govan Mbeki, Thabo Mbeki's father, was in a place called Port Elizabeth.
Yes.
And in Port Elizabeth, I've got a friend, Mark Jankelowitz, and his father was his lawyer, Govan Mbeki's lawyer. And he actually, he was also head of one of the main heads of the Jewish Theodore Herzl School in Port Elizabeth. But he lost a lot of clients because if you were representing black activists, so anybody who came as a client, the security, they were ruthless. They could think that anyway, he suffered financially in his law firm big time by helping Governor Mbeki, put it that way. But he was not ostracized by the Jewish community because he was one of the main leaders of the Jewish day school. So he was respected for what he did, but he lost financially by not having the top clients because they didn't want to be associated with him because he was helping, like they called them black terrorists, but they were like the freedom fighters in a way.
This seems like an obvious question, but Jews were considered white, right? There's no ambiguity about that. Okay.
Absolutely. And what happened was that when I grew up, I was born, I'm 60, so when I grew up in like 1960 onwards, so I never ever experienced anti-Semitism, ever. I went to university with a kippah on, and they accepted me. I was the only one in my class, but there were my brother and before there were other people that also went to the university with the yarmulke on. I'm a dentist, so the dental ball, when they had the dental, once a year they had a dental ball, the only place, and this is really quite amazing, the only place where a black and a white could mix without being arrested or convening or breaking the law was actually at the university, either at Wits, which I went to, the main one in Johannesburg, or UCT in Cape Town, or in a shul or a shul hall. Never ever in the history was a black person ever like denied entry into a shul or a shul hall, but they were denied many times when they went to like a funeral in a church. The police would come in, they would take them out.
Interesting.
So when we had our dental ball, we couldn't even go to a 5-star hotel. Blacks and whites weren't even allowed to mix. So we had it in the shul hall of the Oxford Shul Hall where I got married, and it was never a problem. And when I had my wedding in '85, which was still under apartheid, I worked in the Soweto, the black. I chose to. I didn't want to go into the army. I was very against going into the army, even though I would have been like an officer there, but it just didn't. I didn't want to do that. So I volunteered to work for the health services. So I worked in Johannesburg, the main hospital, as an emergency dentist, and I worked in the black areas of Soweto. With a yarmulke on, never ever having anti-Semitism ever. And when I got married, I had Indian and black nurses and doctors that came to my weddings, and it wasn't even an issue.
You mentioned that most of the Jews that were there were from Lithuania. Mm-hmm. Were there any other contingents of Jews, like any Jews of color or anything along those lines, or was it pretty much the Lithuanian?
So interesting. So there were a small amount of Jews that came before from England, or those that immigrated to South Africa from England, but that was a small amount. The majority were Lithuanian. And then there was a very small German Yeka community, very small. So the German community maybe was like 4%, I don't know, or 5%, maybe even less than that, I don't know. So they had two shuls, a very religious one and a less religious one. And,
I see.
And the British, those that were British, married into the Lithuanian. So you never really had such a division. In the beginning, there was a division, but then afterwards, like they all mixed together. So,
but mostly, it's fair to say Ashkenazi, not Sephardic or anything along those lines.
For the most Sephardi, the Sephardi community was interesting. There was no Sephardi community. In fact, I don't even remember. We never had Sephardi friends. But in Cape Town, a lot of the Jews that came from Rhodes Island, they went to Belgium, Congo, or Rhodesia. I was from Rhodesia. There was a Sephardi community in Rhodesia. And then some of them decided to leave Rhodesia and Belgium, Congo, and they went to Cape Town. And then very few came to Joburg. And in the last 26 years since I've left, I've gone back twice a year. So I still have my pulse on there, what's going on. But quite a few Israelis have come to South Africa. Either they married South Africans or whatever. And a lot of them are Sephardi. And they've opened up quite a few Sephardi shuls.
Huh, interesting.
And then when Chabad came, there was also a very, very big issue when Chabad came. When Chabad came, in the beginning, it was like very big because there no Hasidisha, nothing. You never saw people with strommels or with payers. It just
Yeah.
didn't exist. And when Chabad came, it was like it was difficult because people said that the Rebbe is not Zionistic, and they had these separate communities. But with time, they also intermarried within the literature, you know, and you've got a lot of Chabad rabbis today, but in the beginning it wasn't like that. That are heads of shuls that are not Chabad. And there's the division between Chabad and non-Chabad has become very diluted now. A lot of people, yeah, they on the rabbinical, like the rabbinical association, the head is a Chabad rabbi. So Chabad, and they've mixed in very well now, but in the beginning it wasn't like that at all. They had their own shuls and their own communities and their own schools. Now it's a lot of non-Chabad people, like my brother. We're not Chabad, but his wife is, and their kids went to the Chabad school, but they learned in the Gush, in a non-Chabad yeshiva. So, but there's a lovely mixture now. So everybody gets on pretty well. The Chabad has a function. We'll have Osameach rabbis coming to it. There's not this division anymore.
I heard you say that you left 20 years ago and you go back
26,
twice a year.
26 years ago.
And you go back twice a year.
I left in 94, not because of the upcoming elections when it became like democratic, even though we thought there was going to be a civil war. We really thought there was going to be a civil war. And Mandela was an amazing person because it was really because of him that he prevented a civil war. But I had already made Aliyah, and I went back to South Africa for the elections because I was still working. I had patients that I had to finish off, and I hadn't got I had to take exams to requalify in Israel as a dentist, which was a whole other story which I don't want to get into. It was a terrible thing that they did because they promised there was never an exam, and then unfortunately, when I came, they decided to make this exam, and they made it virtually impossible to pass. So my brother said, "Why don't you just keep on working in South Africa?" And I've done that ever since. So I still work there twice a year.
Twice a year you go.
Yeah, and so I've kept in touch a lot. And my mother's there. I've got a sister and a brother there. And what happens is that I've kept in touch a lot with the Southern community. It's a very special community. It's a unique community. Because, those that have come to Israel have done like pretty well, and those that went to Australia, they like become leaders of the community. I don't know. They just they flourished in Israel as well. What happened is the early Habonim settlers that came to Israel had a tremendous impact on the country because they were very Zionistic. They didn't have what's happened with Habonim now. You know what Habonim is? It's like a secular Zionist youth movement.
Yeah.
But today, they don't want to make Aliyah. So they still feel they're part of Habonim. So what do? Their ideologies change to Tikkun Olam and this, we have to have equal rights and let's fight for the underdog. And we're very anti anything that's right-wing. So you're getting a lot of the anti-Israel sentiment coming from what was once a very Zionistic movement. It's becoming like a bit anti-Zionistic movement. And it's a shame because when those that came in 48, those that volunteered in the different wars were not really that religious, and they had a tremendous impact on the country. The very first, Smokey Simon, he's head of Machal here in Israel, he's turned 100. He was in the very first airplane in the IDF in 48. And he wasn't religious at all, and he's still not religious. But his contribution is unbelievable. When they had the 48 war, many of the volunteers actually came from South Africa, disproportionate out of any other country. For its numbers, the highest was from South Africa.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. At the height, South Africa had 120,000 Jews at the height. Now I'd say it's like about 40, 50,000, maybe even less.
Wow. What's your sense, this is a little bit outside the scope of your Jewish experience, but what's your sense of Israel, of South Africa today in terms of retribution against white people? Like I hear of these stories of farmers being
Okay, so
brutalized. What's
it's
going on
very
there?
heavy. No, it's really heavy because Mandela. We had a group of young entrepreneurs who came to Israel, and what happened is that we spoke very openly and asked him, "What are your views on Mandela?" And he said he was a sellout.
He
Because
was a sellout.
what happened is when Mandela came to power, he retained the Afrikaans police, and the head, it was called the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. And most whites retained their positions in they didn't lose their, they still had their companies, and they did financially pretty well. So the average black since 94 in the beginning didn't really change that much. And what happened is that then you got, after Mandela, his first 4 years was like a honeymoon period. It was really amazing because the country was like very united. And you got Thabo Mbeki. What happened with him, he had a disaster with the AIDS. He just didn't handle it well at all. And then he was like kind of fired. And then you got unfortunately, you got this guy called Zuma. He came into power, and a terrible person, corrupt. Even in '94, he was like involved in it. He was head of the ANC internal security, so he had dirt on everyone, and he became the deputy. I mean, he like had a standard 5 education. He raped a girl, and then who was HIV positive. And then he had a shower. And there was a Jew, this is very sad, there was a Jewish cartoonist, his name's Sapiro. So he's very talented, but he's extremely anti-Israel, this Jewish cartoonist. So he drew a cartoon of Zuma, who was the president, he was the deputy president, totally corrupt, with a shower head on top of his head. So that caused a lot of, and his name's Shapiro. So within the ANC hierarchy, they felt that what is this Jew like belittling our president, but yet he was exceptionally anti-Israel. He once called Israel the skunk of the world, or Olmert
But he was
called
a Jew. They just saw Jew.
Yeah, but he was extremely, it was bordering on anti-Semitic cartoons that he was very talented with his cartoons. He once had Olmert as the butcher of Lebanon. I mean, it was disgusting. It was like anti-Semitic what he was doing, and yet he had always these cartoons of Zuma with a shower head, because there was a court case, and I don't know, they like nearly tried to kill her, and it was terrible. So Zuma has actually bankrupted the country with the corruption. There was an Indian family, the Guptas, that came to South Africa, and they kind of raped the country of all its financial assets. It's just mind-boggling what has happened.
How does that inform the targeting or victimizing white farmers? Is that happening?
Sure, it's happening for sure. So what's happening is that that under the ANC, they were thinking of like Zimbabwe, where they took away land from the whites, and that devastated that country. There's about over 1 million Zimbabweans that have no food and no prospects, so they immigrated to South Africa.
Oh.
Most of them illegal, because they would starve, or their families would starve in Zimbabwe, because they not only did they confiscate the farms, but it meant the farm workers on the farms, and then they gave it to their friends and their buddies, but they had no idea how to do the farming.
Oh my God.
So the whole farming industry just collapsed. So the whole food production also collapsed. Oh. So what happened is that in South Africa with Zuma, he had one of the heads of the youth league of the ANC was a guy called Malema, Julius Malema, and he's very charismatic. And he saw the corruption going on with the Zuma, and Zuma was very powerful. So he went against him, and he was kicked out of the ANC. And then he started his own party. Now he's a very radical person, and he's very against the whites. He has a hatred towards whites. And he's the third largest party. The second party, the Democratic Alliance, Can I just take this call for 1 sec? 1 sec. Hello. Hi, Ms. Connick, how are you? I'm sorry. Okay, there was just a patient who.
No problem.
I'll phone them back. So what happened is that he left the ANC. He's the third largest party, and he comes across as somebody who's anti-corruption, but he himself is very corrupt.
Say his name one more time.
Julius Malema. He's exceptionally charismatic. He's called the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters. So I'll just give you an idea. They had in the middle of the country, it's called the Orange Free State. It's an Afrikaans area where a farmer was actually tied up and killed, and they found the two attackers. And the farmers were so cross that they went to the police station and they burnt a car. And Julius Malema said, "I'm coming there to support the two victims. Those were the two murderers, because they are our heroes." So it's very heavy. But there've been many farmers that have been killed, and when they complain, they said, "Stop whinging. It's nothing compared to how many blacks are killed. What are you complaining about?" They don't have much sympathy at all from the government at all. And
wow.
so the farmers are having it very tough, and the crime is very bad. It's extremely dangerous.
So, but you go back. You feel it's safe for you to go back?
No, not at all. It's not safe one bit.
Not at all.
I've had somebody came and took my phone out of my pocket in front of everyone. And when I was still in shock, and people said, "You're lucky he didn't stab you or kill you. You're so lucky." I know so many people that have been hijacked. My own family, I've got people in my own family. My brother's daughter was hijacked. People that have been killed, many. Somebody was with a tallis bag on Shabbos, and they think they were Nigerians, and they thought it was like diamonds that he was with a suit with a tallis bag. They didn't realize that he's Jewish. And he was killed, and then down the road, they opened up his tallis bag, and they saw. Then they didn't see diamonds there. There was diamonds. The crime is Joburg is the crime capital of the world. It was the crime capital of the world. It's very dangerous.
So you go there, you're on high alert. If you go to visit your family, you're on high alert.
Absolutely. It's like so many people have. Every single family that I know has either had their house broken into, or they've been hijacked, or somebody's been killed.
Oh,
Somebody was waiting to go for Shabbos, and they were driving to a very good friend of mine's sister, and they were waiting outside to let the car go in, and they were just shot and killed, and they stole the car.
oh, oh, it's awful. Why
So
isn't there a mass exodus of white people out of there, given those
the
circumstances?
rain's gone down a lot, and people kind of get used to it. It's weird. They actually kind of get used to it. It's a funny thing, but when you're living there, like they used to give the crime statistics, and then people say we don't want to hear it because it's so depressing. So let's not just hear it.
Oh my
So
God.
I've actually put on YouTube patients that I've interviewed. That one said she said she's like a nervous wreck. So I said, what happened? She said, the person next to me, I saw his head being blown up in the center of Joburg. I said, but like, what are you doing there? You should be going to a psychologist. She said, well, this is Joburg. What can I do? And then
Oh,
she said the worst part is she went back the day after, everything cleaned up as if nothing's happened, doesn't appear in the newspapers, nothing. It's really, really bad.
oh,
So it's not getting better, and it's really
yeah.
not getting better.
I'm conscious of our time, so I just want to ask a couple more questions for you. First, the one is you speak. I'm assuming you speak English,
Yeah,
Afrikaans, now probably Hebrew.
yeah.
What are those the three only languages, or you speak other languages as well?
So it's so strange because our maids used to speak Sotho, but
Sutu.
yeah, we were never, or Zulu, but we were never ever taught how to speak. And there are very few whites that ever bothered to learn the languages. Now they try to change it, but it was really quite weird. And I understand Yiddish a lot, but
Yeah.
looking back, it's a chabal. It's a pity that they never taught us Kosa, or no, not Kosa, Zulu or Sutu, because we heard it spoken all the time, but it was like, why learn it? What for? You know, it's like so inferior. So very few whites can understand the black languages.
Right. But would it be fair to say that you were officially taught Afrikaans?
Yes, yes, you had to be taught. It's a
That's
very
that's
easy, it's a very easy language to learn. It's similar to like Dutch or German in a way.
yes.
So that, but it's nobody liked it. Very few, no Jews would actually speak it. You know, we had to learn it for school, but like very few Jews would ever speak it. But you can understand it.
I'm gonna type something in the chat. I want to
Okay.
I want to get your a translation of what that word means to you.
Okay. Artsat?
Yeah.
Geez, I've never heard, I don't know what that is. Artsat. What does it say? Artsat. No, it's not, the spelling's not good.
If you read that, it means nothing to you.
No, Artsat.
Nothing.
Artsat.
It's interesting. This is completely off of the topic, but
Yeah.
there's a book, The Parable of the Sower, and there's a word called earth seed. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I looked it up, what that sounded like in different languages. And when I did it in Google Translate,
Yeah.
earth seed was artsad in Afrikaans. I thought, oh, that's such an interesting word, but maybe it's just not, it's just a direct translation or something. But it doesn't make
Yeah,
any sense.
people wouldn't say that outside. I don't know. Outside, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know.
How do you say seed? As in, I plant a seed.
You know, I wouldn't even know. Because,
Okay,
you know, we would use the words that you'd use like every day, but seeds,
right.
you'd have to be Afrikaans to know that word. I don't know.
That's just an aside. Just an aside.
What I
You
did
must.
do, I'll tell you something interesting. What I did do is that I did learn because I worked with black patients. So I had to know a few words. So I really wanted to learn. And I wish, looking back at, I wish I would have learned I wish I would have been taught. And, you know, it was hard for me to ask because we had to learn Hebrew. But I wish I would have been taught African language because I think it's the only right thing to do.
Right.
But I did learn some of the words, and I would teach my daughters, like to say hello, how are you? Say in Sotho, it's Dumela Ugai, Kitewe Nugai. So when we would walk, and they would say to the blacks, my little daughter would say, Dumela Ugai, Kitewe, their faces lit up because they felt that, wow, they really made an effort to communicate with us. So it was amazing, and you broke down all barriers. Just a few
Interesting.
little words, which is Yeah, so that was actually quite an interesting thing. But I'll tell you that with the black population, I never ever had any anti-Semitism ever, and they knew that I came from Israel. And when I go back there, even with Afrikaans, I wear a yarmulke. They accepted me into university. They changed the days of exams just for me. I was very fortunate in that way. So I have a
But you say
tremendous.
so the anti-Semitism isn't there, but the racism might be there as it relates to crime. It sounds
Yeah,
like.
it's got, and it's the racism. Basically, you could be a very wealthy black, and they will target you as well. It's not just that you're
Oh,
white.
okay.
It's anybody who's got a nice car. It's irrelevant if you're black or white.
Oh, so if you're a poor white, are there? There must be
There
poor
are
white
poor
people.
whites, sure, there are.
And
I
they're
actually,
okay.
they're not okay. I actually interviewed one. It was amazing. At an intersection, she was begging, and I said, "Wow, I'll give you some money, but can I just interview you?" And I put it on YouTube. It's actually quite fascinating. It's so sad.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's on your. You have a YouTube channel where that's featured.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna check it. Is it under your name?
Under Les Glassman, there's a lot. You can just go South Africa or Poor White or Crime or Hillbrow. Go one Hillbrow. It's quite an amazing one. That I actually walked. It was incredible. Hillbrow is a suburb that used to be high rise, like Harlem, but it used to be a white only suburb. Today it's a black only suburb. No whites would ever dream of going there. And I went there. I was the only white, the only
Wow.
white in this suburb. I actually was the only white. And then what happened is that I had my video camera and I filmed it. That one, wow, it's got like a lot of, it's got my most views. It's got like over 180,000 views.
What's
And
the name of that one? I want to see it.
it's called Hillbrow,
How do you spell that?
Hill. Hold on. I'll get it for you. Let me just see.
All right.
That's actually quite amazing because that gives you a really insight that like whites would never in a million years go there. And the comments have been even more amazing. They said, "Are you mad, Huck? You took your life at stake by going there." When my family found that I went to Hillbrow, they like couldn't believe
You
it.
would have been in trouble.
Now the Jewish area, it was called Yeovil. Today it's become a terrible. It's become like a very no. A lot of even the blacks don't want to be there. A lot of Nigerians are there. A lot of it's just become crime ridden. And it used to be
It's too
the
bad.
Jewish
So
area.
sad.
It's walking the street. I'll tell you, it's walking. I'll send it to you on your, yeah, walking the streets
Awesome.
of. How come you're so interested in the subject?
I grew up, I'm 52, and
Yeah.
I grew up, of course, during as a teenager, early 20s when
I'm gonna send this to
apartheid
you.
was ending. And I just always found it fascinating that there was this culture still at that time that was that way, that had systematically studied racism and like implemented like the best practices of racism from all over the world. And then of course it ended, and one would think, oh, it ended, that's great. But then you hear about this, kind of the retribution, which of course is to be expected, I suppose. But so that's interesting in and of itself. But I think the Jewish thread, your thread, the thread of your life through that experience, is fascinating to me because it's interesting. Jew, as you know,
Yeah, I've got it for you.
better than I, Jews are often considered,
Yeah.
marginalized and outside.
Hello. Sorry,
Eric,
what is your
I'm
name?
just sending you these two. I'm actually sending it to you. It's the poor white. You won't believe it. It's now the thing is that I was very fortunate because I chose to work in a black hospital, and even in the black hospital, they had separate areas for the doctors, where the white doctors would sit and the black doctors would sit.
Oh, really?
It
Even the
was
doctor?
so bad, yeah, even in the hospital. So we always chose to sit with the black doctors. We never sat in the white only. But this was coming near the end of apartheid.
Yeah.
But even then, because there was a lot of the country, even then, most of the doctors were either Indian, and a lot of Jewish doctors chose to go. Very few white doctors ever, or white people ever went to the black areas. They just
Yeah,
wouldn't
why
go.
would they? Like, yeah, they just,
It's like
it's
you wouldn't get too many whites like going into the middle of Harlem.
Right.
Like a similar situation.
It's a be an odd duck that would choose to do that, right? Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Les, I want to thank you so very much for taking, your time to
No, it's a great pleasure.
answer
It's no big deal.
questions.
Eric, it's a pleasure. So, Eric, you know what? Go into that. My big thing isn't this so much anymore. My big thing is now Holocaust survivors. I'm very into documenting their stories. So I'm just going to leave you. Can I leave you with something positive, something amazing?
Of course, yes.
Where do you live? In which part of the States?
I live in New York State. I live about 3 hours to the north of New York City.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a big favor. This is the most incredible story. We went to Poland 2 years ago, and I was in Lithuania actually 4 years ago. Where did your family come from?
I have two stories. So one side of the family came from Spain.
Really?
And the other side of the family came from Finland, not too far away from Lithuania.
Are you being serious? Where in Finland? I don't believe it.
Turku, Finland.
I've been there. I've been there at the airport.
It wouldn't surprise me. It's a great place. It's on the Swedish side, on the towards the western side, right?
There once was a shul there, but there's not anymore.
Is that a fact? I don't know that. I don't know. They came in the 30s. So
I went to. They had a stamp exhibition in Finland. I was involved in stamps. So I was the commissioner, and we went. It was in the middle of Finland. Can you believe I've forgotten the name of that town we were in? Wow! But it's like the middle of Finland.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's amazing.
The other side, so that one side of my family's blonde and blue haired. The other side came from Spain. I look like them. I look like, and so
we're in Spain. Do you know we're in Spain?
Alicante, Spain. It's a little bit near. It's on the Mediterranean coast near Valencia.
Wow! Hey, incredible.
Yeah, they both all four grandparents came in the 1930s. And both of my parents were, of course, born in New York City. I was born in New York City. I'm a second generation American, but that's the background that I have. And
Tempori. Okay, sorry, I just remember.
Sure.
So the stamp exhibition was in Tempore, and it was amazing. There's no Jewish community there at all, but there's a lot of Finns, a lot of very pro-Israel Finns, a lot, and there's a flight. Well, before COVID, there was a flight from Finland to Israel maybe 2-3 times a week.
Really?
Yeah. And there are quite a few Finns that I actually met somebody converted, blonde, everything, and she converted to Judaism. And there's a lot of Finns that speak Hebrew. It's amazing.
Isn't that? I would have never guessed that.
Yeah.
I
should send it to you. I should send it to you.
Please.
The one who converted, I wanted to interview her, but she just wasn't keen, and I couldn't force it. I said, please, let me just, for 2 minutes, she wouldn't. But she
wouldn't do it.
No, but there's quite a few that, one woman, I was in Jerusalem in a store, and she was very blonde, and I said, her accent was different, so I said, do you mind if I ask where you're from? She said, sure, she's from Finland. And I said, where in Finland? And she said, Tempore. I said, I can't believe that's where I'm going. Yeah, it's amazing. It's really incredible.
You cannot get a more Finnish name than my name, Erik Lehtinen. That is about as Finnish as it gets.
Wow. Wow.
Les, you are. I'm assuming you sent those links, but to my email. I'm
Yeah.
As soon as we end this meeting, I'm gonna go look at it.
Okay, then this is one thing that I really want you to see. Hebrew. I'll just put here Hebrew, Finland, Hebrew. So I got this message. Yo, even met the Finnish ambassador here in Israel. Very nice lady. Here, there's a gypsy from Tampere who wore a Magen David. She came to our home. Pro-Israel gypsy from Tampere. Yeah, it's amazing with a Magen David.
Really?
Yeah. It's
funny.
You won't believe it. Yeah.
That's interesting.
They were very, I'll send you a few. So what happened is that this guy sent me, he saw my video. Yeah, this is pro-Israel Finnish. I'll show it to you. You won't believe it. It's quite, they came to our home. we saw them at the airport, and we just kept a lovely connection with them. Very
Oh,
proud.
Les, how funny.
And when I was in Finland, in Tampere, so obviously I wore my yarmulke, and people came up to me, and they were very nice to me. They, yeah, it's actually Tampere. Have you been to Tampere? It's actually a very nice place.
I went to, I didn't go to Tampere. I went to Turku, Helsinki. We traveled a little bit within the, I haven't been there though, no.
I'll send you like a view of it. It's beautiful. They have a big tower.
I am looking forward to telling my wife about our conversation because her side, she's Ashkenazi. Her side came from Lithuania, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
And so she'll be interested to hear about the. And
you know,
actually, my
you know
wife is
where in Lithuania?
I don't know that. I don't know that. She actually went to visit South Africa 6 years ago. My wife. She had a friend who was in South Africa, and they went to visit, and she thought it was beautiful.
And you couldn't go. You couldn't go with her.
I didn't go. I had a pretty big conflict. I couldn't get around, so I ended up not going on with her. Yeah. She loved it for what she experienced of it, and but she's going to be very interested to hear about the Lithuanian South African connection. That is not something I would have guessed. I would not have.
So you know what I must do? I'm gonna send you our trip to Lithuania, because if she's from Lithuania.
Oh yes. Yeah. Les, you're the man.
Hey?
You're the man.
No, Erik,
Thank you.
This is actually quite nice. But I'm gonna, if you can do me a favor, if you can.
Of course, anything you need. What do you need?
Okay, I'll just show you. Okay, so this guy sent me this video, because I'm sending quite a few videos.
Okay, good.
He sent me this video of, I'll just put this here. This is the trip. He sent me this video of his story, which was unbelievable. He never knew that he was Jewish. He came from a town called Czestochowa in Lithuania. Yeah. And till the age of 7, he didn't know that he was Jewish.
Oh,
and he came back from school. His mother was a single mother. His father wasn't Jewish. And he came back from school at the age of 7 and tells his mother that we can't have meat tonight because tomorrow we're going to church and they're going to put things on our hair. The mother said, you can't go to church. He said, why not? My friends are going. She said, because you're Jewish. So what happened with him is that the mother realized that she has to do something. Her parents were both survivors of the camps, and they had nothing, so they came back to the town. And then what happened was that at the age of 12, she always knew that she had to give him a bar mitzvah. She went to the chief rabbi in Warsaw, and he said, is your son Brist? And he wasn't Brist. So the rabbi, he's a very nice person, Studrik. He knew that there were American rabbis who were going to Lehensk. So I asked him, can you please, it's very rare to do a bris on a Polish kid. They said his grandparents were Holocaust survivors. So they said, I'll do it with pleasure. They did the bris, and they kept a very close connection with the mother. And when he reached 15, they said to the mother, we prepared to pay for him, but he should come to America and learn about Judaism. And we'll pay his air ticket, and we'll pay for him to learn. And then every year he can go back to be with you during the big holiday.
Yes.
So the mother did the big sacrifice, and she allowed him to go. And at the age of 15, it's like a Rabbi Akiva story. He was put in the class with the grade 2s, the 7-year-olds, to learn Torah at the age of 15. It's phenomenal. And he did. And he graduated from the school. He's very passionate about music. He was offered a role to be Dudu Fischer. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a very big singer. He did a full-length movie on the Holocaust. And they wanted him to be the young Dudu Fischer in Poland. And he said he can't because those 2 months he's with his mother. So he gave up a role of a lifetime. But anyway, his mother passed away 3 years ago, and he did a song called Akedah, which is like the sacrifice. And he dedicated it to the mother. It's the most beautiful song. Beautiful. So do you mind if I send it to you? It's really,
please,
special.
Please
and if you can like send it on to other people, because it's really. I just want to help this guy because
I'll send it to everyone I know.
Okay, that's
I'll send
great.
it to everyone I know.
I'm going to send it to you now.
Done deal.
Okay, so I've sent you quite a few videos. I think you'll find it quite interesting. But
I'm going to be enjoying every second of them. As soon as this Zoom call ends, I'll be watching videos.
okay, Erik, this has been amazing. So just be in touch. Why don't you do WhatsApp? WhatsApp is so easy. It's such an easy thing to use.
Until you mentioned it, I thought it was something that 12-year-olds did.
No. You know, you can speak for nothing on it. It's very easy.
But it's like a telephone, right? It's not. Is a Zoom or is it like a telephone?
No, it's like a phone call, but it's for free. If you both connected to WhatsApp and you can send videos, you can send messages, it's phenomenal.
But isn't this better? I see you.
No. You can see on WhatsApp as well. They've also got a camera.
Oh, they have a camera as well?
And you can send links, you can send videos, you can
You know what, Les, you know what I like about Zoom? You know what I like? I'll check it out, but I'll tell you what I've enjoyed about Zoom. Zoom is good because you send a person who hasn't downloaded anything a link.
Oh, okay.
And they click a link and they're in the meeting. And sometimes I'm an insurance broker.
Okay.
I deal with a lot of older people, and they can do email. They click a link and they're in the meeting. They don't have to download anything, so it's a lot easier. That's why I've been using Zoom.
Oh, okay.
That's why. So just keep that in mind as you there is some benefit to using Zoom because it's easy. You just click a link.
Yeah, it's also true.
So something to think about. Thank you, my friend. I really very much
such a pleasure. No, it's been a great pleasure. I'm going to just send this to you. Okay, it's really, really special. I just want to get the right one.
Yeah, take your time. Take your time.
I'll just play it for you for a second, and so you'll know which one it is. It's the last one that I'm sending right now. And then you can just, if you're interested in survivors, that's a big deal because I'm spending quite a lot of time on that. But okay, I'll just play. This is it. Oh, okay. It's very beautiful. So he composed the music. He composed the music and he took it from the Torah. And he writes his story on the top. It's really quite amazing.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
It's very beautiful. I'm going to
Les, I'll definitely check it out. I promise you. As soon as this call is over, I'm going to watch it.
Hey?
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you very much. Go get some sleep. It's late.
God bless. Be well, hey?
God bless you. Stay well.
You too. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.